The cold metal walls of the asteroid mining station hummed with the steady rhythm of life support systems. Deep in space, far from any planet or sun, the small research outpost drifted through the darkness like a tiny spark of human life. Inside the xenobiology lab, 19-year-old Hannah Kim worked alone under the bright white lights. Hannah had always loved studying alien life forms. Even as a child back on Earth, she collected pictures of strange creatures from distant worlds. Now, as an intern on Mining Station Eco 7, she spent her days examining rock samples and searching for signs of ancient life. Most days she found nothing more exciting than fossilized bacteria. But tonight felt different. The station shook suddenly, making test tubes rattle on their shelves. Hannah grabbed the edge of her desk and waited for the tremor to pass. The asteroid they lived on was supposed to be stable, but lately the seismic sensors had been picking up strange readings from deep underground. Another quake, she said to herself, checking the sensor readings on her computer screen. The numbers made her frown. The vibrations were not coming from mining operations or equipment failures. They seemed to be coming from the very center of the asteroid, from places where no human had ever been. Captain Lee Minho's voice crackled through the communication system. "All stations, report status. We just had another seismic event." "Hannah." "Press the reply button. Lab 7 reporting. All equipment secure, but Captain, these readings are getting stronger. Whatever is causing them is getting more active." "Understood. Continue monitoring and report any changes." Hannah turned back to her work, but she could not concentrate. The mystery of the seismic activity had been bothering her for weeks. She pulled up the geological surveys of the asteroid and studied them carefully. The rock formation was unusual, with several large caverns that the original mining survey had marked as empty space. Another tremor shook the station, this one stronger than before. Hannah watched her computer screen as the seismic readings spiked. The source was definitely coming from Cavern Complex Delta, about 2 kilometers below the main mining level. She made a decision. Grabbing her exploration gear and a portable scanner, Hannah headed for the equipment bay. If something was happening in those caverns, she wanted to be the first to discover what it was. The journey down to the lower levels took 30 minutes using the mining elevators. The air grew colder as Hannah descended, and the walls changed. From manufactured metal to rough stone? She had been in the mining tunnels before, but never this deep. Following her scanner, she made her way through narrow passages that wound deeper into the asteroid. The rock here was different from the upper levels, with a strange crystalline structure that seemed to catch and reflect her flashlight beam in unusual ways. Finally, she reached a large opening that led into Cavern Complex Delta. Hannah stepped through and gasped at what she saw. The cavern was enormous, stretching far beyond the reach of her light. But what took her breath away were the crystals. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in massive crystal formations that glowed with a soft blue-white light. It was like stepping into a fairy tale. As she moved deeper into the cavern, her scanner began picking up energy readings unlike anything she had ever seen. The crystals were not just beautiful, they were alive with some kind of power that made the air itself seem to hum. At the center of the cavern, on a raised platform of crystal, Hannah found something that made her heart race. It was an egg, but not like any egg she had studied in her xenobiology classes. This egg was nearly a meter tall, with a shell that looked like it was made of the same glowing crystal as the cavern walls. Hannah approached carefully, her scanner going wild with readings. The egg was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with internal light. As she watched, the pulsing grew faster and stronger. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "It's alive. It's really alive." She activated her communication device to contact the station, but the signal could not penetrate the crystal formations. She was alone with the most amazing discovery of her life. The egg began to crack. Hannah stepped back, her heart pounding. A thin line appeared on the surface, then another. The crack spread like a spider web across the crystal shell, and a soft sound came from inside like a bird singing. The shell split open and a small head poked out. Hannah found herself looking into the most beautiful eyes she had ever seen. They were large and intelligent, colored like deep space with tiny points of light that twinkled like stars. The creature that emerged from the egg was small, no bigger than a house cat, but it was clearly a dragon. Its scales were dark blue and seemed to contain their own inner light. Small wings unfolded from its back, and it looked around the cavern with curious eyes. Then it looked at Hannah. The moment their eyes met, something magical happened. Hannah felt a connection form between them, as if an invisible thread had been drawn from her heart to the small creature. The baby dragon made a soft, chirping sound and took a step toward her. "Hello, little one," Hannah said gently, kneeling down. "I'm Hannah. I won't hurt you." The dragon walked right up to her and nuzzled against her hand. Its scales were warm and smooth, and Hannah could feel a gentle vibration, like a cat purring. "I think I'll call you Byul," she said, using the Korean word for star, "because you shine like starlight." Byul chirped again, as if he liked the name. Hannah carefully gathered the broken eggshell pieces and began the long journey back to the surface. Byul followed her, sometimes walking and sometimes trying to fly on his small wings. By the time they reached the laboratory, he was riding on her shoulder like a small, scaly parrot. Dr. Park Ji-won was waiting in the lab when Hannah returned. The older woman's eyes widened when she saw the baby dragon. "Hannah, what have you found?" "I think," Hannah said carefully, "we're going to need to contact the Galactic Science Council. This is going to change everything." Dr. Park ran every test she could think of, and each result was more amazing than the last. The creature was definitely a dragon, but not just any dragon. According to the genetic database, it was an astral drake, a species that had been extinct for over 1,000 years. These creatures were legendary, Dr. Park explained. They were said to be the most intelligent beings in the galaxy, with abilities that bordered on magic, but they disappeared long ago. No one knows why. Hannah looked down at Byul, who was sleeping curled up in her lap. He looked so small and innocent, but according to the records, he was potentially one of the most powerful creatures in the universe. "What do we do now?" Hannah asked. Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment. "We protect him," she said finally. "And we hope that no one else finds out about this too soon. There are beings in this galaxy who would do anything to get their hands on an astral drake, but it was already too late." Deep in space, long-range sensors had detected the energy signature of the hatching. Ancient alarms were sounding on ships that had been hunting for exactly this kind of signal. The Vex hunters were coming. 3 weeks had passed since Byul hatched in the crystal cavern deep inside the asteroid. In that short time, the baby dragon had grown from the size of a house cat to nearly as large as a small dog. His dark blue scales now shimmered with an inner light that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat, and his star-like eyes had grown brighter and more intelligent. Hannah spent every free moment with Byul, studying his behavior and documenting his rapid development. The dragon rarely left her side, following her through the corridors of the mining station like a loyal pet. But Hannah knew he was far more than that. Sometimes she caught him staring at the walls as if he could see through them, and twice she had seen him make small objects float in the air when he was excited or frightened. Dr. Park Ji-won had been sending encrypted reports to the Galactic Science Council, but so far they had received only automated responses saying the information was being reviewed. Captain Lee Minho had increased security around the station, though he admitted privately that their small mining outpost was not equipped to handle serious threats. Lieutenant Yoon Tae-young, the station's security chief, had been running combat drills with the crew. Most of them were scientists and miners, not soldiers, but everyone understood that Byul's discovery had put them all in potential danger. "The problem is," Lieutenant Yoon explained to Captain Lee during their morning briefing, "we only have basic defensive systems. If someone really wants what we have here, we won't be able to stop them." Captain Lee nodded grimly. "Keep running the drills, and make sure everyone knows their emergency positions." Hannah was in the main laboratory with Byul when the long-range sensors detected the approaching ships. The dragon had been playing with a holographic puzzle that Dr. Park had created for him, using his small claws to move pieces through the air without touching them. Suddenly, Bjorl stopped playing and turned toward the outer wall of the station, his scales flickering with nervous energy. "What is it, Bjorl?" Hannah asked, reaching out to stroke his neck. The dragon made a low humming sound she had never heard before, as she felt a strange tingling in her mind, as if someone was trying to speak to her without words. The station's alarm system activated, filling the corridors with flashing red lights and warning sounds. Captain Lee's voice came through the communication system, calm but serious. "All crew to emergency stations. We have multiple unidentified vessels approaching our position. This is not a drill." Hannah gathered Bjorl in her arms and ran toward the command center. The dragon felt tense against her chest, and his scales were now glowing brightly enough to light their way through the dim corridors. The command center was crowded with crew members staring at the main display screen. On it, they could see 5 large ships moving toward their position. The vessels were unlike anything Hannah had ever seen before, with twisted metal hulls covered in spikes and strange growths that looked almost organic. "What are they?" someone whispered. Lieutenant Yoon was studying the sensor readings with a frown. "The ships are heavily armed, but the design is not in our database. I have never seen anything like them." Dr. Park joined them, her face pale. Those are Vex Hunter ships. I recognize them from old military reports." The room fell silent. Everyone had heard stories about the Vex Hunters, though most people thought they were just legends used to frighten children. They were said to be a species of mutant predators who traveled the galaxy hunting rare and dangerous creatures. "Are you sure?" Captain Lee asked. Dr. Park nodded. "The irregular hull design, the organic modifications, the way they travel in? Hunting packs, it has to be them." An incoming transmission signal began flashing on the communication panel. Captain Lee hesitated for a moment, then activated it. The face that appeared on the screen was a nightmare. The creature's head was too large for its body, with pale gray skin stretched tight over a skull that had been surgically expanded. Multiple eyes of different sizes were scattered across its face, some natural and others clearly artificial implants. Metal tubes and wires ran from its neck into what looked like a breathing apparatus. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "Human vessel. I am Crow, pack leader of the Vex Hunters. You have something that belongs to us." Captain Lee straightened his shoulders. "This is Captain Lee Minho of Mining Station Eco 7. You are in human space without permission. State your business." Crow's largest eye focused on the camera with disturbing intensity. "We detected the energy signature of an astral drake hatching 3 weeks ago. The coordinates lead to your pathetic little station. You will surrender the creature to us immediately." "I don't know what you're talking about," Captain Lee replied, though his voice was not entirely steady. Several of Crow's eyes moved independently, as if scanning something beyond the camera. "Do not lie to us, human. We can smell dragon essence from here. Our instruments detect quantum fluctuations consistent with a young astral drake. You have 10 minutes to bring the creature to your docking bay, or we will take it by force." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in shocked silence. Hannah clutched Bjorl tighter against her chest. The dragon was trembling now, and she could feel waves of fear and anger coming from him. His scales had dimmed to almost complete darkness, as if he was trying to hide. "We can't give him to them," she said firmly. "Bjorl is not a thing to be traded. He's alive and intelligent. He has rights." Dr. Park placed a hand on her shoulder. "The Vex Hunters don't care about rights, Hannah. They collect rare creatures for illegal fighting rings and genetic experiments. If they get Bjorl, he will suffer horrible things." Lieutenant Yoon was already moving toward the weapons locker. "How long can our shields hold against their weapons?" "Not long," Captain Lee admitted. "Maybe an hour if we're lucky. Then we need to get everyone to the emergency shelters and prepare for boarding parties," Lieutenant Yoon said. "These creatures are known for their physical modifications. They're stronger and faster than normal beings, and they don't take prisoners." As if to prove his point, the station shook violently as the first energy blasts struck their shields. Through the viewports, They could see the Vex ships positioning themselves around the station like predators surrounding prey. Biel suddenly lifted his head and made a sound Hannah had never heard before, a low, musical note that seemed to vibrate through the metal walls of the station. For just a moment, the lights flickered and she felt that strange tingling in her mind. Again, stronger this time. What was that? Dr. Park asked, staring at the dragon. I think, Hannah said slowly, Biel is trying to tell us something, or maybe warn us. Another blast shook the station, and this time the lights went out completely. For several seconds. When the emergency power activated, Lieutenant Yoon was speaking rapidly into his communicator. All sections report. Shield generators are at 60% and falling. We have maybe 30 minutes before they break through. Captain Lee looked around the room at his crew, then at Hannah and Biel. Get to the emergency shelters. Everyone except essential personnel. I'm staying with Biel, Hannah said firmly. Hannah, you need to get to safety. Biel needs me. I can feel it. We're connected somehow, and if I leave him alone, he'll be terrified. She looked down at the dragon, who was staring up at her with his star-filled eyes. Besides, if the Vex hunters are here for him, nowhere on this station is really safe. The station shook again, harder this time. Through the communication system, they could hear crew members reporting damage throughout the facility. Dr. Park checked her instruments. Shields are down to 40%. At this rate, they'll break through in 15 minutes. Lieutenant Yoon activated the station-wide communication system. All crew members, this is not a drill. We are under attack by hostile forces. Report to emergency stations immediately. This is a code red situation. As the crew scattered to their positions, Hannah remained in the command center with Biel, Captain Lee, Dr. Park, and Lieutenant Yoon on the main screen. They watched the Vex ships slowly circling their station like sharks smelling blood. What do we do when they break through? Hannah asked. Captain Lee's expression was grim. We fight. And we hope help arrives before it's too late. But deep down, everyone knew that help was days away, and they had minutes before the Vex hunters broke through their defenses. The real test was about to begin. The shields around Mining Station Eco 7 finally collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. Through the viewports in the command center, everyone could see the 5 Vex hunter ships moving closer, their twisted hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. Shields down to 0%, Lieutenant Yoon Tae-young reported, his voice tight with worry. They're moving into docking position. Captain Lee Min-ho activated the station-wide communication system one last time. All crew members, the station has been boarded. Follow emergency protocols. Stay hidden and stay quiet. Do not attempt to fight unless you have no other choice. Hannah held Biel close to her chest as the dragon trembled with fear and anger. His scales had gone completely dark, and she could feel strange energy building up inside his small body. It was like holding a battery that was charging up for something powerful. We need to move, Dr. Park Jae-won said urgently. The laboratory section has multiple escape routes. If we can get there, we might be able to avoid them long enough for help to arrive. They left the command center just as the first Vex hunter ship attached itself to the station's main docking port. Through the metal walls, they could hear the sound of cutting tools as the aliens began forcing their way inside. The corridors of the station had never felt so long or so dangerous. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, and every sound made Hannah's heart beat faster. Biel had stopped trembling and was now perfectly still in her arms, but she could feel him listening to everything around them with senses far sharper than human ones. They had almost reached the laboratory section when the lights went out completely. They've cut the main power, Lieutenant Yoon whispered in the darkness. Emergency power only from now on. Red emergency lights flickered on, giving everything a blood-colored glow. In the distance, they could hear the sound of metal being torn apart as the Vex hunters forced their way through the station's bulkheads. This way, Dr. Park whispered, leading them down a side corridor that connected to the laboratory complex. There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the lower levels. We can hide there until ... A sound behind them made everyone freeze. It was a wet, sliding noise like something large and organic moving across metal. Slowly, they turned to look back the way they had come. At the far end of the corridor, illuminated by the red emergency lights, stood something that had once been alive but was now a nightmare of flesh and metal. The creature was nearly 3 meters tall, with arms that had been replaced by mechanical claws and legs that ended in metal spikes instead of feet. Its face was a mask of tubes and wires, with glowing red eyes that moved independently as they searched the corridor. "Vex Hunter," Lieutenant Yoon breathed, reaching for his weapon. The creature's head snapped toward them, and it let out a sound like grinding metal mixed with an animal's roar. Then it began moving toward them with a speed that should have been impossible for something so large. "Run!" Captain Lee shouted. They ran through the corridors as fast as they could, but the creature behind them was faster. Its metal claws left sparks as they scraped against the walls, and its breathing apparatus made a horrible whistling sound as it followed them. Hannah clutched Bjol tighter as they ran, feeling the dragon's small body vibrating with some kind of internal energy. His eyes were glowing now, brighter than she had ever seen them, and the air around him seemed to shimmer. They reached the laboratory section, and Dr. Park quickly activated the emergency locks on the doors behind them. The thick metal barriers would slow down their pursuer, but everyone knew they would not stop it for long. The maintenance tunnels. Dr. Park gasped, pointing toward a small access hatch in the wall. "We can get to the lower levels through there." As they opened the hatch, they heard the sound of metal being torn apart as the Vex Hunter began forcing its way through the emergency doors. Whatever modifications had been made to its body, they included strength far beyond that of normal creatures. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dark, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. They moved as quickly as they could, following the tunnel system toward the mining levels where they might find better hiding places. Behind them, the sounds of destruction grew louder as more Vex Hunters entered the station. They could hear the creatures systematically tearing through bulkheads and barriers, searching every room and corridor. "They're not just looking for Bial," Lieutenant Yoon realized as they crawled through the tunnels. "They're destroying the life support systems. They want to force us out into the open." He was right. As they moved through the tunnels, they could hear the sound of air recycling systems being damaged and water pipes being torn apart. The Vex Hunters were turning the station into a trap, making it impossible for anyone to hide for very long. They finally emerged from the maintenance tunnels in the hydroponics bay, a large room filled with growing plants that provided fresh air and food for the station. The room was dark except for the dim glow from the plant growth lights, and it smelled of earth and green growing things. Hannah set Bjell down for a moment to rest her arms. The dragon immediately began exploring, his nose twitching as he smelled the plants and soil. For just a moment he seemed almost happy, like a normal young animal discovering new things. That was when the wall exploded inward. A Vex Hunter, even larger than the first one, tore through the metal wall like it was paper. This creature had been modified with additional arms, each ending in different types of weapons and tools. Its face was completely hidden behind a breathing mask that glowed with sickly green light. The alien saw them immediately and let out a roar of triumph. It began moving toward them, its multiple arms reaching out with claws and cutting tools. Hannah threw herself in front of Bjol, spreading her arms to protect him, even though she knew it was hopeless. The dragon was so small, and she was just a human girl with no weapons and no way to fight something so terrible. But Bjol had other ideas. The young dragon stepped out from behind Hannah, his scales suddenly blazing with bright blue light. His star-filled eyes focused on the approaching Vex Hunter, and he made a sound like music mixed with thunder. The air around Bjol began to shimmer and twist, as if reality itself was bending. The dragon's small wings spread wide and energy crackled between them like miniature lightning. The Vex Hunter stopped moving, confused by what it was seeing. Its weapon arms moved uncertainly as its various eyes tried to focus on the glowing dragon. Bjol made that musical thunder sound again, louder this time. The energy around him grew, brighter and more intense. Hannah could feel the hair on her arms standing up, and the plants in the hydroponics bay began swaying as if blown by an invisible wind. Then Bjol released whatever power had been building inside him. A wave of blue energy exploded outward from the dragon, washing over the Vex Hunter like a tide. Where the energy touched the creature, its solid form began to flicker and fade, as if it was being erased from reality. The alien tried to roar, but no sound came out. It reached toward them with its weapon arms, but they passed through empty air. Its body became transparent, then translucent, then disappeared completely. For a moment, there was only the sound of the hydroponic systems humming in the background. Then a loud crash came from below as something very heavy fell through multiple levels of the station. Buell's glow faded, and he swayed on his feet, exhausted from whatever he had just done. Hannah quickly picked him up, amazed and frightened by what she had witnessed. "What just happened?" Dr. Park whispered. Before anyone could answer, a voice came from the communication panel in the hydroponics bay. It was Engineer Kim Do-yeon, one of Hannah's friends from the technical crew. "Hannah, if you can hear this, I'm in the maintenance section below the main mining level. I've been watching what these things are doing, and you need to know something important." Hannah activated the panel. "Do-yeon, we're here. What did you find? These Vex hunters, they're not just hunting for sport or profit like everyone thinks. They're working for someone else. I intercepted their communications. Someone specifically wants that dragon alive, and they know exactly what it can do." The implications of Do-yeon's words sank in slowly. The attack on their station was not random. Someone had sent the Vex hunters specifically to capture Buell, and they had detailed knowledge about astral drake abilities. "Who would know about astral drakes?" Captain Lee asked. "They've been extinct for 1,000 years. That's what we need to find out," Dr. Park said grimly. But first, we need to survive long enough to get answers." As if summoned by her words, the sound of tearing metal echoed through the hydroponics bay. More Vex hunters were coming, and this time they knew exactly what they were facing. More Vex hunters were coming through the torn wall of the hydroponics bay, but Hannah was no longer the frightened girl who had discovered Buell just weeks ago. Watching the young dragon use his mysterious powers to defend her had awakened something inside her mind. She was a scientist, and scientists solved problems. "Dr. Park," she said quickly, "what do we know about Vex hunter biology from the old military reports?" Dr. Park looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned in her eyes. "They're cybernetic modifications. The implants are connected to their nervous systems, but the integration is imperfect. There are always weak points where organic tissue meets mechanical parts." Hannah nodded, her mind racing. "And their enhanced muscles need constant chemical support from those breathing apparatus they wear. If we could disrupt that, we could level the playing field," Lieutenant Yoon finished. Catching on to her plan, Engineer Kim Do-yeon's voice crackled through the communication system again. "I'm sending you the chemical analysis of the atmosphere around those creatures. Their breathing systems are pumping some kind of synthetic hormone into their bodies." Hannah looked around the hydroponics bay with new eyes. Instead of just plants and growing systems, she now saw a chemistry laboratory full of useful compounds. The nutrient solutions, the growth hormones, the pest control chemicals, even the soil additives could all be weapons if used correctly. "Bill," she said softly, to the dragon in her arms, "can you understand what I'm thinking?" The small dragon looked up at her with his star-filled eyes and made a soft chirping sound. Suddenly, Hannah felt that strange tingling in her mind again, but this time it was clearer. She could sense Buell's thoughts touching hers, simple but intelligent, safe. Protect, together. The connection was real. Somehow, when Buell had used his quantum abilities to defend her, it had created a mental link between them. She could feel his emotions, and, more importantly, he could sense her intentions. "We need to work together," she whispered to him. "Can you help me?" Yes, trust, strong, together, the words formed in her mind without sound. And she knew they came from Buell. The first new Vex hunter pushed through the torn wall, this one equipped with scanning equipment that swept the room with beams of red light. Unlike the creature Buell had phased out of reality, this one moved more carefully, as if it had been warned about the dragon's abilities. Hannah had been mixing compounds from the hydroponic systems while they talked. Now she had a spray bottle. filled with a combination of plant growth accelerator and mineral acid. It would not kill the alien, but it might damage its cybernetic systems. When I give the signal, she whispered to the others, scatter and use the growing tables for cover. Make them chase us separately so they can't coordinate. The Vex hunter spotted them and raised a weapon that looked like a cross between a gun and a cutting torch. Hannah waited until it was almost close enough to fire, then threw her improvised chemical bomb directly at its breathing apparatus. The mixture hit the alien's face mask and immediately began eating through the metal and plastic. Thick smoke poured from the damaged equipment, and the creature stumbled backward, clawing at its face. "Now!" Hannah shouted. Everyone scattered in different directions, diving behind the long tables where food plants were grown. The Vex hunter tried to follow them all at once and ended up spinning in confused circles as its damaged breathing system failed to provide the chemicals its enhanced muscles needed. Bill chirped once and focused his glowing eyes on an overhead water pipe. The metal began to bend and twist as reality warped around it. Suddenly the pipe burst, sending a spray of water mixed with plant nutrients down on the struggling alien. The creature's cybernetic parts began sparking and smoking as the water shorted out its electrical systems. It let out a roar of pain and anger, then collapsed as its modified nervous system shut down. "One down," Lieutenant Yoon called from behind a table of tomato plants, but more were coming. Through the holes in the walls, they could see the lights of additional Vex hunters moving through the station. These ones were being more careful, working together, and checking their equipment. "Doyan," Hannah called into the communication system. "Can you cause any more problems for them from where you are?" "Already working on it," came the reply. "I've been sabotaging their ship's docking connections. If I can get them to disconnect properly, they'll drift away from the station. But I need more time." "Time we might not have," Dr. Park said, watching the approaching lights. Hannah looked down at Bill, who was still glowing softly from his recent use of power. The dragon seemed less tired now, as if their mental connection was somehow giving him strength. "What if we don't run from them anymore?" she said slowly. "What if we hunt them instead?" Captain Lee looked at her with surprise. "Hannah, they're trained killers with military modifications. But they're also predictable," she replied. "They hunt by following standard patterns like animals. They expect their prey to run and hide. They don't expect their prey to think." She began moving through the hydroponics bay, gathering more chemical compounds and explaining her plan. The Vex hunters were stronger and faster than humans, but they relied on their enhanced bodies and technology. They had forgotten how to be creative. "We use the station against them," Hannah continued. "Every room has different chemicals, different tools, different ways to trap or disable them. And Bill can do things they don't understand. Together we can turn this from a hunt into a war." Over the next hour they proved her point. Using her knowledge of chemistry and biology, Hannah created traps and weapons from ordinary station equipment. In the medical bay, she mixed anesthetics with the air recycling system, putting 2 Vex hunters to sleep. In the engineering section, she and Doyan used electromagnetic fields to scramble the alien's cybernetic implants each time they fought. Buell's abilities grew stronger and more focused. The dragon learned to create small gravity fields that made the heavy aliens stumble, and to bend light so that he and Hannah could move unseen through the corridors. Most importantly, other crew members began to see that the supposedly invincible Vex hunters could be defeated. Soon, everyone was contributing ideas and working together to fight back Dr. Choi Mina. The station's veterinarian used her knowledge of animal behavior to predict how the hunters would move. Engineer Doyan continued sabotaging their equipment from the maintenance tunnels. Even the miners, who had never been in a fight before, began setting traps and creating diversions. By the time Krall himself entered the station, half of his hunting pack had been defeated by a group of scientists and workers who refused to be prey. Krall moved through the mining station like a force of nature. The Vex pack leader was larger than any of his hunters, and his modifications were far more extensive. His arms had been replaced with weapons that could cut through metal like paper. and his legs were mechanical constructions that let him move faster than any living thing should be able to. Most terrifying of all were his eyes. Where other Vex hunters had multiple artificial eyes added to their faces, Krall had replaced his entire head with a mechanical construct that could see in all directions at once and detect energy signatures that normal senses could not perceive. He had followed the trail of his defeated pack members through the station, and his analysis systems told him exactly what had happened. A human girl and a young astral drake had been working together, using primitive chemistry and basic physics to defeat genetically enhanced predators. It should have been impossible, but the evidence was all around him in the form of disabled hunters and cleverly constructed traps. Now he was getting close to his prey. His sensors detected the dragon's quantum signature just ahead, in what the station schematics identified as the main laboratory complex. Hannah and Bjol were indeed in the laboratory, but they were not hiding. Hannah had spent the last hour studying the readings from Dr. Park's instruments, trying to understand exactly what Bjol was and what he might be capable of. The energy output is increasing exponentially, Dr. Park reported, watching the dragon with fascination and concern. 3 weeks ago, he could barely lift a test tube. Now he's manipulating gravity and bending space-time. Bjol had grown again during their battles with the Vex hunters. He was now the size of a large dog, and his scales had developed a crystalline quality that made them look like pieces of captured starlight. His wings, once tiny and barely functional, now spread wide enough to let him glide through the station corridors. Most remarkably, his eyes had changed. They still held that deep space darkness filled with points of light, but now those lights moved and swirled like miniature galaxies. I think the stress of protecting me is making him mature faster, Hannah said, stroking the dragon's neck. The wild astral drakes probably didn't grow this quickly. But he knows we're in danger, and his instincts are pushing him to become strong enough to defend us. Bjol made a soft rumbling sound and nuzzled against her hand. Through their mental connection, Hannah could feel his love for her, but also something else. Power was building inside the dragon, more power than his young body should be able to contain. I'm worried about him, she admitted. What if he grows too powerful too quickly? What if his body can't handle the strain? Dr. Park was about to answer when every alarm in the laboratory activated at once. On the security monitors, they could see Krall approaching through the corridor outside, his mechanical body moving with deadly purpose. He's here, Lieutenant Yoon said grimly, checking his weapon, the pack leader himself. Through the reinforced glass of the laboratory's observation window, they watched Krall stop outside the main entrance. The alien's mechanical head turned in all directions, scanning the room with various types of sensors. When he spoke, his voice came through the communication system with the sound of grinding metal. Human child. I can see you in there with the Drake. You have caused me considerable trouble, but that ends now. You cannot hide from me, and you cannot defeat me as you did my hunters. I am far beyond their capabilities. Hannah stepped up to the window, still holding Bjol in her arms. We're not hiding, and we're not going to let you take him. Krall's mechanical head focused on her with disturbing intensity. You do not understand what you are protecting, human. That creature will become one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy when it matures. It is better that it serves a useful purpose now rather than becoming a threat to everyone later. Bjol would never hurt innocent people, Hannah replied. Firmly, perhaps not while it remains bonded to you. But what happens when you die of old age and it lives on for thousands of years? What happens when it grows large enough to destroy planets with its abilities? For a moment, Hannah felt a flicker of doubt. She looked down at Bjol, who was staring at Krall with an expression of pure hatred. The dragon's scales were beginning to glow brighter, and she could feel dangerous energy building up inside him. It doesn't matter, she said finally. He's not a thing to be owned or controlled. He's a living being with his own choices to make. Krall made a sound that might have been laughter. Foolish human sentiment, but no matter. I have come prepared for your bond with the creature. He raised one of his weapon arms, but instead of a cutting tool or energy blast, It deployed a device that looked like a metal flower made of spinning disks and crackling wires. "A neural disruptor," Dr. Park gasped. "It's designed to sever psychic connections." The device activated, sending waves of painful energy through the laboratory. Hannah screamed as it felt like someone was driving nails into her brain. Biol cried out as well, a sound of such pure anguish that it made everyone in the room flinch. The mental connection between them, which had grown stronger with each battle, suddenly felt like it was being torn apart. Hannah could feel Buell's thoughts slipping away from hers, replaced by a terrible emptiness, but Krall had made a critical mistake. Instead of gradually weakening the bond between human and dragon, the neural disruptor was trying to break it all at once. The psychic backlash from such a violent separation sent feedback through the device and back into the minds it was trying to separate. Instead of breaking apart, the connection between Hannah and Biol suddenly became stronger than ever before. It was like a bridge that had been struck by lightning and transformed from wood into steel. Hannah gasped as new sensations flooded her mind. She could see the laboratory from Buell's perspective, but also from perspectives that didn't exist yet. She was seeing possible futures, probability streams, quantum uncertainties made visible. In some futures, Krall succeeded in capturing Biol. In others, the station was destroyed. But in a few shining possibilities, she could see a path to victory. Biol was changing too. The dragon's body was growing rapidly, his scales shifting from blue to a deep purple-black shot through with veins of silver light. His wings spread wide and began to glow with the light of distant stars. When he opened his mouth and roared, the sound bent reality around it. Metal walls rippled like water, and the station's gravity fluctuated wildly. Krall's single quotes' confidence wavered as his sensors detected energy readings that should have been impossible. "What is happening? The Drake is too young for such power." "You were right about one thing," Hannah said, her voice now carrying strange harmonics that resonated with Buell's roar. "You don't understand what you're dealing with?" Buell leaped from her arms and landed on the laboratory floor, now the size of a small horse with wings that seemed to contain actual starlight. He focused his galaxy-filled eyes on Krall and began to gather power. The air around the dragon started to twist and fold. Reality itself was bending as Buell reached into dimensions that normal creatures could not even perceive. Energy crackled between his claws like captured lightning, and his roar became a sound that seemed to come from the birth of stars. Krall raised his weapons and fired everything he had at the laboratory windows. Energy beams and projectiles struck the reinforced glass, but they passed through harmlessly as Buell wrapped the entire room in a pocket of twisted space-time. Then the dragon released his power. A storm of quantum energy exploded outward from Buell, washing over Krall like a tidal wave of pure possibility. Where the energy touched the alien's mechanical body, it began to slow down as time itself became thick and viscous around him. Krall tried to move, but his arms were moving through time at a rate of seconds per hour. He tried to speak, but his words stretched out into meaningless noise. His mechanical eyes still tracked movement, but everything around him was moving too fast for him to process. Buell had trapped the pack leader in a bubble of dilated time, where minutes passed like hours and hours passed like days. Krall was effectively frozen while the rest of the universe moved on around him. The dragon's power faded, and he swayed on his feet, exhausted by the effort. But he had won. The terrible hunter who had seemed unstoppable was now just a statue trapped in his own personal timeline. "Is he," Lieutenant Yoon asked. "Alive," Hannah answered, feeling Buell's satisfaction through their enhanced connection. "But he'll be trapped like that for a very long time. Maybe years." Through the station's communication system, they heard Engineer Doyen's excited voice. "The Vex ships are pulling away. I think when their pack leader didn't report back, they decided to retreat." Dr. Park was staring at Buell with awe and a little fear. "Hannah, do you understand what just happened?" He manipulated time itself. The power required for that should have killed him. Hannah looked down at the dragon, who was now curled up at her feet like an oversized cat. Through their connection, she could feel his contentment and his love for her, but also something else. a sense of purpose, as if this battle had been just the beginning of something much larger. "I think," she said slowly, "we're all going to have to learn some new things about what's possible." The rescue ships from the nearest human colony arrived 6 hours after the last Vex Hunter vessel disappeared into deep space. Captain Sarah Chun of the Colonial Defense Force found a mining station that should have been destroyed but was instead mostly intact, with a crew that should have been dead but was instead alive and surprisingly well. Most puzzling of all was the report she received from Captain Lee Minho about a 19-year-old xenobiology intern who had defeated an entire pack of Vex hunters with the help of a baby dragon and some improvised chemistry. "Let me understand this correctly," Captain Chun said as she toured the damaged but functional station. "Your intern discovered the last surviving member of an extinct species, bonded with it psychically, and then used scientific knowledge and creative thinking to defeat some of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." "That's correct," Captain Lee replied. "And we have security recordings of most of it if you need proof." Captain Chun had already watched some of those recordings. She had seen Hana Kim mixing chemicals in a hydroponics bay and setting traps that disabled aliens 3 times her size. She had seen the dragon call Biel phase enemies out of reality and manipulate time itself. Most importantly, she had seen how they work together, human creativity combining with draconic power to achieve things that neither could have accomplished alone. "Where are they now?" she asked. "The main laboratory. Biel has been sleeping for most of the day. Using that much power seems to have exhausted him. Hana has been monitoring his condition and documenting everything that happened." They found Hana in the laboratory, sitting next to the sleeping dragon and writing in a digital notebook. Biel was curled up on a specially made cushion, his star-filled scales rising and falling with each breath. He was still the size of a large dog, but his scales had settled into a pattern of deep blue shot through with silver lines that pulsed gently like a slow heartbeat. "Miss Kim," Captain Chun said gently, not wanting to startle either the girl or the dragon. "I'm Captain Chun. I'm here to take you and your friend somewhere safe." Hannah looked up from her notes. "Safe from what?" "The Vex hunters are gone and Kral is trapped in his time bubble for years to come. Safe from everyone else who's going to want to study Biel, capture him, or use him for their own purposes. Word is already spreading through the galactic communication networks about what happened here. Every government, corporation, and military force in known space is going to want to get their hands on the last astral drake." Hannah's expression hardened. "Biel isn't a thing to be owned or used. He's intelligent and he has rights." "I agree completely," Captain Chun said quickly. "That's why I'm here. The Colonial Council has reviewed the situation and made a decision. They're creating a new position in the Xenological Research Division. They want you to be the first official Dragon Keeper, with full authority to protect Biel and any other astral drakes that might be discovered." "Other astral drakes?" Dr. Park asked from across the laboratory. "But Biel is supposed to be the last one." Captain Chen smiled. "That's what everyone thought. But your dragon friend has been busy while he was sleeping." She led them to the observation window that looked out into the station's central courtyard. There, arranged in a careful pattern on the metal floor, were 7 objects that looked like crystalline eggs. Each one glowed with the same inner light as Biel's scales, and each one pulsed with its own rhythm. "He made them from his own quantum crystallized scales," Captain Chun explained. "According to our xenobiologist, they're not exactly eggs, but more like genetic templates that will grow into dragons when the conditions are right. Biel has found a way to restart his species." Hana felt a warm glow of pride and amazement through her connection with the sleeping dragon. Even while resting, he had been working to ensure that astral drakes would not remain extinct. "The Colonial Council has also made another decision," Captain Chun continued. "They're establishing a new research station specifically for studying and protecting endangered species. They want you and Biel to be the first residents." "What about the people who sent the Vex hunters?" Lieutenant Yoon asked. "Engineer Doyan said they were working for someone else." "We're investigating that." The data Doyan recovered from their communications suggests there's an organization that collects powerful artifacts and beings for unknown purposes. They'd been operating in secret for decades, maybe centuries, but now that we know about them, we can start hunting them instead of the other way around. Dr. Park nodded approvingly. It's about time someone stood up to these collectors and traffickers. Bial stirred on his cushion and opened his star-filled eyes. He looked around the room, taking in all the new faces, then focused on Hannah with an expression of sleepy contentment. Through their bond, she felt his simple but powerful emotions: safe, home, family, new beginnings. "What do you think, Bial?" she asked softly. "Do you want to go help protect other creatures like yourself?" The dragon stood up and stretched his wings, which had grown larger while he slept. He made a sound like distant music and nodded his head in a very human gesture of agreement. Over the next few hours, as the rescue ships prepared to depart, word of what had happened at mining station Eco 7 spread throughout human space and beyond. The story was simple but powerful. A young woman and a baby dragon had defeated some of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy using nothing but intelligence, creativity, and the bond between them. For humanity, it was proof that their greatest strength was not in their weapons or technology, but in their ability to form connections with other species and to find solutions that no one else had thought of. The galaxy's predators had learned that humans were dangerous not because they were violent, but because they were unpredictable and protective. For other species, it was a lesson about underestimating opponents based on size or apparent weakness. The Vex hunters had been so confident in their enhanced bodies and advanced weapons that they had forgotten the most important rule of hunting: sometimes the prey fights back. As Hannah and Biol boarded the transport ship that would take them to their new home, she looked back at the mining station where their adventure had begun. In just a few weeks, her life had changed from that of a quiet student to a guardian of one of the galaxy's most amazing creatures. "Are you ready for this?" she asked Biol as their ship prepared to jump to hyperspace. The dragon looked up at her with eyes full of starlight and made a sound that was part purr, part song, and entirely content. Through their connection, she felt his absolute confidence in their partnership and his excitement about the future they would build together, ready, together, strong, new worlds to explore. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving mining station Eco 7 behind, Hannah reflected on everything they had learned. The Vex hunters had come expecting to capture a helpless creature and instead had encountered something they never could have predicted: the power of friendship between species, the strength that comes from protecting others instead of conquering them, and the dangerous creativity of humans who have something precious to defend. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest export was not technology or resources, but the ability to form bonds that transcended species barriers and to find hope in the most impossible situations. And somewhere in the quantum patterns that Biol had left behind, 7 new dragons were slowly beginning to dream of hatching into a universe where they would be protected, loved, and free to grow into whatever they chose to become. The lesson had been taught, and it would not be forgotten. In a galaxy full of predators and prey, humans had proven that there was a third option: to be protectors, partners, and friends to those who needed them most.